Hi, how's it going? So today's sketchbook tour is going to be a little bit different as it's not a sketchbook. It's selections from the coloured paper that I had. I think I started working through it in March and got through it all in April, I think it was, maybe May. And it was 500 pages. And these are just a few selections from that because it'd take me forever to get through 500. And some of it probably isn't appropriate for YouTube. So I figured I'd just select a few bits at random, and thankfully I'd been scanning these in for the art book that I'm working on. So yeah, let's just get through it. So these were all, I believe, no reference, random, subconscious kind of things. These two guys are, I was exploring doing kind of like strange creatures, I think, for a day or two. I was getting a bit fed up of just drawing people, which is something that happens every once in a while. I feel like I should be branching out a little bit, and didn't have a thought necessarily. I knew that I wanted to do something different, but I didn't come up with this design in my head. It just sort of happened. Unfortunately, in some cases, because they are a bit freaky. But yeah, trying to do something cute and weird and just seeing where the line takes me. I've become a little bit obsessed with drawing cats. I used to have 3. I've only got 1 now, unfortunately. So there's definitely some cat-like images, tentacles and fish. Typically things that I kind of like to do as well. And bugs, flowers. Anyway, so this is all unfortunately jumbled up. It's out of order, so there might be more critters. But this was a phase that I went through that I wanted to do something a bit more passionate, I suppose. Again, become more interested in drawing scenes as opposed to just drawing people, like random portraits and things. I want the people to, you know, almost live a life. So, and things like kissing and hugging, you know, they seem like quite interesting subject matter. And again, it wasn't necessarily that I thought I'm going to draw a bunch of kissing people. I just thought, you know, it's something that people do, and it, you know, it's a fun thing to practice. So I used to do these kind of things. I used to call them headaches, cluster headaches. And then just a couple of women. This woman is, so I had a dream. I don't often remember my dreams. They're usually quite vivid when I do. But I had a twin sister, and this was me trying to replicate that dream in a sense, like who it was. She doesn't, from what I remember, because it's memory's funny, isn't it? It just morphs into something else, and it doesn't really look like who she was, but it was an attempt anyway. A couple more attempts at that. But yeah, it was a really strange dream, and I remember feeling like I'd lost something at the end of it, which is like, yeah, dreams do that sometimes, don't they? But yeah, it was really nice to have a sister. Well, I mean, I have a sister, Joanne, who's lovely. But this, with it being a twin sister, I don't know, it was weird, it was different. Again, trying to do some scenes, and this is a bit more scribbly. Which again is fine. I go through phases of doing things that feel quite clean, and then I go through phases of doing things that feel a bit more like I'm trying to aim at something that's a little bit out of my reach. So things get a bit more scribbly. But that's the thing with working with pen. Once you put a line down, it's sort of there forever. So again, I think this is one of the few times I actually had an idea. I thought it'd be quite funny to turn some of the people that I usually draw into balloons. I think next door they've got a grandson, and he was blowing balloons, so it sort of inspired me to do something with blowing balloons. So I think this was the first kiss that I drew for that little series, and I think I was only doing it for like an evening, maybe. I tend to do these kind of drawings in an evening, and I'll do studies and stuff during the day. But yeah, just the idea of doing something that was passionate. It was a lot of artists similar to me. You know, I get compared to, you know, the obvious kind of people. But I feel like a lot of the time, especially male artists, they tend to do battle scenes and fighting and shooting, and I'm not really that into any of that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a good action film, and I will draw things like that every now and again. I'm not opposed to drawing violence necessarily, but I don't love it the same way. I'm not drawn to it like I am drawing, you know, I suppose, sad, melancholic women and, you know, people having more mundane moments, or, like I say, moments of passion, or things like that. Because I feel like there's enough violence in the world, especially at the minute, and I don't want to add to that. So this, like I said earlier, I was going through a bit of a phase of drawing cats. Went a bit off the rails, that one, although it's still kind of cute. But I remember really liking that one. Again, just try to draw. So these are what I tend to call my anima sketches. I draw a lot of women, and it's usually as a result of my role models growing up were women, and I've always felt that I was a lot more feminine. I've always really looked up to women, or femininity just in general, regardless. And yeah, it's just my way of expressing that appreciation, I think. I definitely had moments in my life where I felt like I'd like to be a woman, especially when I was a young child. I really wanted to be a girl because femininity, my mum and her friends, was a real safe environment to be around those people. And yeah, and I also believe that for me personally, creativity does stem from that femininity within me, through the nurturing of ideas. So it's just something that I try and embrace, and I typically draw people, but especially women, when I first start off, when I think, right, I'm just going to do some random stuff, and women tend to come out. I do worry that people would misconstrue it as, you know, it's more desire focused than it is, and sometimes it is. You know, I'm a straight guy. You know, like you've got to, you know, if you're going to express anything, it's better to do it on the page. Do you know what I mean? So don't get me wrong, sometimes it can go that way, but most of the time it's not. And yeah, anyway. So some more critters. Now the critters tend to come from a place within me that I call the lizard. And I did a blog post, if you're interested in anything that I'm rambling on about, I did a blog post about the 4 personas that I tend to characterise my creativity, especially when it comes out through the subconscious. I feel like there's like 4 masks, 4 modes of being that I have within me. And one of which is the lizard. And the lizard is very much into creepy. He's very much bass. A little bit closer to what I was also saying about some of the women sketches that I draw. He's also quite into doing like he wants validation, and he wants to do something that looks impressive the easiest way, because it's a lazy mode of being. It's procrastination as well. And like I say, it's not necessarily that I have this voice within me. I don't have an anima speaking in my ear. I don't have a lizard. But it's more a mode of being. It's like the mask that we put on, you know. And I can sort of see in the sketches, because like I said, I keep saying, like, I don't have a visual memory like that. When I'm drawing something, it just comes out. I don't think about what I'm about to draw. Like, you know, I feel like Mobius probably did. I know Kim Jong-gi used to talk about you've got to have the mental image in your mind. I don't. I just draw a lot, and then it goes through that filter. So in a fun way, then I'd sort of look through these drawings and I'm thinking, right, well, why did I draw that? So these personas are a way to explain that, I suppose. So yeah, this was another scene, just getting into the idea of drawing scenes. I was doing a fair bit of storyboarding work for the last couple of years, so it was also a way to practice that. Some figure sketches. Now, social media and YouTube included in that, you know, they've got a real thing against the human form, and it becomes an objectification, and I think it just exacerbates things. But I have, you know, if I feel like I just want to draw a figure and it'd be kind of nice to share, I have started to clothe people. But for me, those sorts of things were never about being spicy, you know. So some more kissing. And yeah, it was a real challenge in some respects, and it's something I could probably do with maybe getting some references and trying to figure out a little bit better. Just some random people. So yeah, this figure comes in quite often. One of the other four personas that I was talking about, I call the Doubter, and he's usually a bearded man, usually a little bit older. And yeah, that's it's putting a face to a mode of being, because the Doubter, when I'm feeling that pressure that I'm not good enough and I need to practice and I'm lost and it'll never be good, is more to do with the studies. So it's less like a character, and it's more just that self-doubt that we all have, you know. Every artist and every person, regardless of what you're doing, goes through that. So again, just trying to do something that was less less passionate, but just as loving, you know. And then just a character. Trying to experiment more with different hairstyles and clothing, because I do want to clothe these people as well, you know. It's not like I was saying a little bit before. I'm jumping around topics. I'm sorry. It's because it's all jumbled up. But yeah, I'd love drawing clothes. It's something that I want to get a little bit better at. Definitely. And then just having a bit of fun. So usually after the first hour, I've drawn lots of characters, I've drawn lots of people, I've maybe tried my hand at doing something else with those people, and, you know, maybe then I'm like, well, I'd like to just draw some trees. I start thinking about what else I could do and test my knowledge on, and I go through different phases. you know, of like sometimes it just sort of comes out and I'm not thinking about it. Sometimes I have an idea of what I might want to do, and sometimes I have an actual idea. I do, you know, come up with things that I think would be fun. But yeah, this was like after an hour of that sort of process, and I was just in the flow state, let's call it, and you start to get a bit more playful. It's less about, you know, saying to yourself, oh, I can still do this, and then it's like, well, what else can I do? I remember being really quite happy with this. Again, whenever I'm happy with something, the internet kind of says otherwise. They're not as happy with it as I am. And it's kind of a rare thing for me to really kind of like something, but I feel like a few artists have their trademarks, and mine's slowly becoming a little heart. I've started to put that on a lot of things, especially when it comes to sort of like something that's a bit more freaky. And this is definitely like another example of an anima sketch. I've started to throw in a lot of nature in there, ideas of Mother Nature and Eve and things like that. Not that I believe necessarily in any of those things, but it's symbolic, you know. Another freaky monster. This one's getting a little bit, like I say, the lizard. So there's definitely some luder elements to this, some grotesque, a little bit violent even. And again, this is just me having a bit of fun. Just some more characters, trying to give these women some attitude. So yeah, this is another. I've always had a bit of a troubled history with masculinity. It's not that I dislike masculinity per se, but I've never been very sporty. I've never really liked things that most, you know, stereotypical kind of man things. And I feel like, you know, he's the kind of guy that I remember. I used to go to pubs when I was a kid with my family, and I remember seeing these kind of guys, you know. And he always looked a bit scary, and yeah, always, when I was a child especially, a bit fearful of masculinity in that way. This is another one of those headaches, those cluster headaches, where I just draw lots of heads together, try and dream from different angles. I'm forever trying to remember about certain elements of the eyes, and trying to make sure that I give enough width in the face and little things like that. So I think this was probably one of the first pages that I did on a particular session of doing subconscious drawings, and it does tend to be, there's an element of just trying to remember things. As this one was a little bit more in that flow state and playing around again with themes and having these characters, these people actually doing things or holding things and getting to that stage, again with the heart. Ideas of nature and death have come up quite often as well. And again, just another character holding some bouquet of flowers. Again, I remember being quite happy with this. This feels more like a character design to me, which I was quite happy with. Playing around with jewellery and accessories and clothing and fun stuff like that. Sometimes I just let the mind wander and, you know, blobs off his head. Seems to make sense. It's a bit Mobius-esque, because, you know, no man is an island, as they say, and, you know, there's definitely inspiration from artists that I have that end up in these things. Especially when there's a brush pen in my hand, you know, it tends to go towards the more Super Annie sort of stuff. When I've got a fine liner in my hand, it tends to go a bit more Mobius-esque. But I feel like it comes from a different place, and obviously it's whatever it is, you know. It's best to embrace those things, I think. Not worry about them too much. But yeah, oh, this last one, I remember being really happy with that, because I've been trying to draw the human figure for what feels like years now, and it's probably the hardest thing that I have to try and conquer in terms of the angles, and I don't really know anatomy very well, not in a traditional sense. I have tried, and there's definitely things that I remember from when I did try, but yeah, most of this is through observation, through drawing myself typically, and learning how the arm twists and what the hand's going to do and the angles of which and the folds, and I feel like this one feels natural. It's one of the few that does to me, especially at that scale, because I tend to draw quite small. And that was something else that I was going through with this 500 stack of colour paper, was trying to draw a bit bigger, because I'm so used to drawing in little sketchbooks with little pens. So it was, again, quite fun to draw something a bit big. This character, I remember really liking her hair. She's definitely got a twinkle in her eye about something. So, like I say, it's whatever. Oh, this isn't going to fit on the screen entirely. But yeah, around this period, I was thinking about the blog post that I wrote and the personas. And like I say, I've always had an idea that there's this femininity, this anima within me when it comes to my drawing. Sorry, my stomach's rumbling. It's nearly lunch. So, yeah, but then I got into the idea of, you know, what there's definitely a part of me that, you know, procrastinates, and, you know, everyone's got a libido, everyone's got that side of themselves, and it's time to explore that. So this isn't what I would necessarily call our lizard sketch, because it's far too tame and pleasant, but those ideas were coming into my head that maybe it's time to embrace some of those qualities in my work. So yeah. And this is me again, just having a bit of fun in that flow state. Playing around with ears and just food in general. Just having a bit of fun, you know. And then to finish is just a weird couple of guys. It's probably best not to think too hard about what they might be up to. And on that note, I'll leave it there, because this has been quite a long video. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.